Good morning, gentlemen. This is going to be the third part, the final part in my series, just on myself, basically. An autobiography about what I'm all about, where did I come from, why am I thinking the things that I'm thinking in this RPG space. And there's obviously way too much to cover, so the series is what it is. I'm just going to wrap things up here with the third part where we discuss the various modules that I've played, which I think is another great way of looking at where someone's coming from. So I've kind of tried to split this up into a series of like five time periods. So there's like an early period, which includes some fifth edition Lamentations, and then just starting to get into OD&D. There is, and then four other periods, which represent certain philosophical shifts at each point, or at least thoughts about other games that I've been in. And we'll get to those as we come to them. So to start things off here, the early period, fifth edition. There was Numenera before that, which I'm not going to get into. That game has some cool modules, like the 10 Instant Adventures book, which is like 4-page adventures, which are way more functional than a lot of your one pagers, but not super important. Although it does ultimately inform some of the game design that I've done later. But in any case, fifth edition, we played Horde of the Dragon Queen. A different guy DM'd it, then I DM'd it. It wasn't great. Pretty sucked. Pretty much sucked. I tried to run Princess of the Apocalypse. That group fell apart for mostly for other reasons, but it didn't seem like the content was all that great anyway. So I started really digging into older stuff, or specifically works that were actually recommended, rather than just buying whatever the new and greatest thing is. So I guess that's one point right away you can take, which is do not just buy stuff because it's new. Let it sit out there for a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years even, and then see if people really like it. Maybe then give it a shot. And also, if you can look into who the author is, for example, anything written by Gary Gygax is going to be great. Uh, so some of the stuff that I ran would have been like Shadows of the Last War from third edition, and this was all run using the 5e rules. But at least from the player side, I would generally use the book more or less as is. So Shadows of the Last War, Tomb of Horrors, using the AD&D version, and my players tore through that. And this is one of those things where I really think that the people who play third edition and Pathfinder and all that, obviously there are some messed up people who play those games, but like the normal people who play those games are just very clever people, and are a lot brighter than just about anybody in the OSR. Uh, Notably, like one of the most respectable people in the OSR is Arnold K from Goblin Punch, who started on third edition Pathfinder type stuff. Kind of funny. I'm not sure what that's about exactly. Something about people's age and turn of the century, and maybe the way it interacted with video games. I don't know. That could be a whole video topic on its own. Third edition weirdness and why that's so seems like it's so prevalent for just generally brighter, more successful, happy people, instead of the weirdos in the OSR who are really bitter, low IQ. um, but I also ran. There's a module I've recommended sometimes, Code of the Rats, which is like a sort of a test module to like get new players into the old school style of thought. I feel like that's something that I would love to do an homage to at some point because it could definitely be improved upon. I did run Better Than Any Man during that time period as well with 5e, which was quite a bit of fun. I played in a bunch of Ravenloft games. I don't even know what they were. They were just stuff in Barovia generally, not necessarily Castle Ravenloft itself, but other stuff. There was a Spelljammer campaign in G1. I don't want to go into that too much. I don't know what it did for me, other than maybe give me some desire to keep looking into old school Lamentations stuff like Grinding Gear or Forgive Us or Fuck for Satan has been weird. Lamentations is pretty hit or miss. I don't know. Towards the end of this early period and getting pushed more into the old school side, I started modifying 5e, frankly, mostly just to reduce the hit points dramatically. I did also make custom character sheets for each player so that it would be more clear what their character was. And that kind of gets into something that I'm all about, which is the user experience of playing the game. Just trying to make it as easy as possible for each player to play. The character sheets for a system I feel are very important. It's insane to me how bad all the ones are for AD&D. They're absolutely shit, just complete fucking brain dead shit. Which really, it's sort of depressing because everything that Gary Gygax made is so good, and it's all for AD&D, and absolutely everything else surrounding AD&D is complete incompetence, and we'll get to that more as we go into modules. The 5e thing ended, and then I started going directly into OD&D with Vault of the Warlord, the Layover in Carningray campaign, and the Magi of Malmo campaign, which then starts going into Ransack, which is kind of my own thing based on OD&D, with quite a bit of AD&D pulled in. So that's sort of the early period, I guess, where I first got into this, like where I would even be making videos for people who would even care enough to listen to me. That all mostly happens before and like just starts to inch into anybody caring what I have to say. And of course I've moved, which has messed up the camera focus. I hate this thing. There we go. Okay. Now, playing more with people online, one of the biggest things, this is now my second category here of topic. We got 5 topics to cover. The second category is what I'm calling the Mud Core versus Gygax section. And this is driven by me playing in a lot of sessions where you earn 14 XP for the session on your way to 2000 XP to level 1. And a lot of this is treasure values that you'll find during the session, which are literally so small that they can't even be expressed in my rule system because I changed everything by a factor of 10. So 1 XP in my game is 10 XP in D&D, and you'll find treasure that's worth less than that. It's like, well, that's an unexpressible amount. It's worth nothing. And I wouldn't really even give away any kind of treasure that was worth 1 in the first place. It would generally be worth somewhere between 10 and 25, like minimum. And yet you're getting into all these sessions where values like that are more than the entire group gets for an entire 4, 8, 12 hours of play. And it's like, what is this crap? This tutorial-focused crap. This is not the game. I've been asked to retire a character because they got to 3rd level. I've been asked to retire a character because they were halfway to 2nd level, which is really, really impressive. They weren't even leveled up yet. It's like, wow, they can afford plate. It's like, okay, what the fuck? So this gets me to my concept of, 1, counting treasure in modules to see what it's like. You look at all the Gygax modules, and it's about 500 XP per character level per room. So if you're level 1, every room on average has 500 XP in it. If you're level 5, every room on average has 2,500 XP in it. And this is 2 to 3 or more orders of magnitude off from a lot of stuff you play. And so my benchmark for this is Village of Hamlet, having played that. And that one is a little weirdly lopsided where all the treasure is at the end. And actually, that one's abnormally high regardless. But if you ran Village of Hamlet in someone else's campaign world, would it completely fuck up everything they're doing? That's my benchmark for the real game, the one that Gygax came up with, versus the mudcore nonsense tutorial horseshit that everybody else runs. So that's one of my big epiphanies of playing online. Another thing is, the next category here is the idea of enjoyment, like actually enjoying what you're doing at the table, versus sort of story gaming. And just, the fun is the imagination that it doesn't even happen at the table. I guess it looks like I don't have any good examples here. Well, okay, so I do have some examples. So enjoyment side of things, Keep the Pace, for example, was a module that I wrote, a time trial, 3.5 hours. A lot of the people, in fact, everybody that I playtested with it originally, loved it. They thought this was the greatest thing since sliced bread. They're like, this is pure gaming in the greatest possible way. Now, I didn't put anything in the module to explain like what is the how would you connect this into a campaign world? What's the capital F fantasy of it? Like, why does this place exist? What's it all about? And then, Prince, this was something I submitted for No Art Punk 2, and Prince was like, wow, this doesn't work because where's the fantasy? Which is fine. I guess that's fine, but it does overlook just how much fun everyone is having. And then I made the mistake of running the module for some story gamer type people, and they didn't get it. Like they just don't get it. Like they don't understand the concept of playing the game at all. They're just not interested in that, uh, which is weird. But it sets up a clean dichotomy, I feel, between people who want to actually play the game versus somebody who wants to, I don't know, talk, like make funny voices, role play, pretend that they're somebody else, or just try to like play weird word games with the DM. That's something I've seen a lot in the OSR spaces is people who their only goal is to like see what the DM will let them get away with or say to them, and that's it. Like they don't care about the game at all. So there's all these weird neurotic BS in the OSR, and I think some of these modules, Castles in Tillin is another one where it's like just straight up gaming, and people sometimes bounce off of that or get scared of it, and it's just like, who cares, man? This is really cool. It's cool when there's stuff happening in the game. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's really bizarre. So that's the third part. The fourth category I have here is the sort of odd thing going on between OSE and AD&D, and this gets into a kind of the point I was just making, where some of the modules, like all the Gavin Norman stuff, Hole in the Oak, and then of course there's the OSE anthology, the Ravener's Scat, the Jeweler's Sanctum, and even a module like the Hall of the Blood Kings, which got raked over the coals for being about like the king of all vampires, which I don't really think is true in terms of what the module says. But all those OSE modules are actually fun. They're legit. Like I've run those multiple times for multiple groups, and everyone has a great time, and it's fun. And there's treasure, there's cool monsters, there's cool rooms. You can do a little talk, faction play, whatever. They all of those kept the players engaged at the bare minimum level. They weren't the greatest. Some of them are better than others, but they kept the players engaged. And then I look at some of these AD&D modules that I've been recommended, like Finch's Pod Caverns of the Sinister Shroom is just absolute shit. Fucking dog shit. Some of the worst crap I've ever seen. It's so bizarre because people talk about the importance of like maps, and then they get tricked by like the structure of the map on some of these things. Uh, like the Shroom map has this loop, and all the rooms in the loop are empty, and then it loops back into the main path. And I'm gonna get into this again a little later, but this idea of like the structure, like seeing a map and it has a ton of structure to it, but it's not good. It's sort of there's this weird inability to differentiate that someone is failing to do good mapping versus doing simpler but better maps. I don't know. Like some of the maps in the OSE stuff are really pretty basic, if you look at them, and it's just it's a big square. There's like 20 rooms. There's not really anything too interesting that you're gonna do in there, but at least it works. The gameplay is okay. Whereas something like Pod Caverns, like the rooms just don't make any sense. Like they don't. I don't know. It's just garbage. Many Gates of the Gan was another one by Guy Fullerton, which got the best from Bryce Lynch, which really, that module is really truly some fucking trash heap. Holy fuck, is that thing bad? Um, and this just kind of keeps getting me where all these modules that are rated as the best are just trash garbage when they're actually put into play because of the contents of the rooms. And I don't know how to explain it, but there really is something going on with the maps and something about the punchiness of like certain rooms. Like there will be like one room that has like a description that fills a page and it blows people's minds for some reason, even though it doesn't produce good gameplay. I don't know. There's some disconnect here between the module as read and the module as played, and it has something to do with the structure in the map. I don't really get it, but I do know that all the OSE modules I've played have been at least fun, if not great, and these AD&E modules have been complete garbage, just unplayable shit. Um, Yeah. So that's the fourth thing. And the fifth thing here, which is going to circle back around to the same point, is looking at some of the nap entries, specifically Hangar 81 versus Melanath Falls. And this kind of gets into a conversation I had with Black Razor. Because Hangar 81, for me, it's not finished. It needs a lot of work, but it has a lot of workable ideas in it, and the content is good. I don't like having to come up with rules for going into space on the fly, but that wasn't that important. That was part of it, but that was one of the things that made the session entertaining. And I had to make something up anyway. In a lot, you often have to make stuff up in other content anyway. So, for example, Melanoth Falls, it has like this strong environmental concept. I really like the idea of the waterfall and like the different levels you have to go to. I just think the concept is married to garbage. Like all the rooms are garbage. Like the layer is garbage. Like there's not enough there. I think Melanoth Falls blows ass. Um, and I had this conversation with Black Razor where he was sort of sneering at this idea of Hangar 81. Like, well, I don't want to have to make up the game as we go. I want the game for me. Uh, and then I imagine that he would have effusive. I don't know. I could ask him probably. I probably should have asked him before making this video. But I bet he would have effusive praise for something like Melanoth Falls. And this again gets back to the sort of tolerance that people have for having the structure in place, even though the content is trash. Whereas I have a different type of tolerance. Whereas I don't. As long as there's interesting ideas and set pieces and encounters, I can impose a structure on the session if I need to. And I feel like this is the biggest, maybe the biggest disconnect between me and anybody else, what I'm looking for, because I feel capable and confident in imposing a structure on madness. This has literally been my job as an engineer, often going into existing projects that need a lot of work or rework because they're just a mess. Uh, and I guess maybe, in my experience, other people don't do that, aren't interested in that, which I guess maybe is what's happening, where they want structure, and if the content inside isn't all that great, that's fine. Or maybe they sauce it up a little. Uh, maybe they don't care or don't think about that as much because they're more interested in what's happening at the level of like a social dynamic with the table, or just sort of caring about the rules. Like as long as the rules are being played out, they're fine. I mean, like I've said before, some people just like to do the math. I don't know. So I think I've conveyed something by going through these five things. I also managed to keep the video under 20 minutes, and I did throw some people under the bus. I really hate uh, some of the modules from a few people. I I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I hope I there's at least one of those people where I would like to try some other of their work and see what it's like, but I don't know. Well, I think that'll do it. I guess that's the end of this three-part series. I hope to keep all the other videos I make in the future under 10 minutes. If anything in this video you thought was interesting and it wasn't actually covered all that well, like I could go into more detail, maybe even make a whole video about specifically one thing, ask and I'll do it. And I'm going to go to Free RPG Day because that's today, June 22nd. See ya.